Hello, my friends, and welcome back. We have a very special guest today. This is my third child, but my oldest to homeschool. This is Joshua. He's 16. He's about to turn 17 next month. Joshua was pulled out of public school at age 13 as he was about to go into 8th grade. Academically, school came very easy to him. He probably gave me the most trouble of all my kids as far as homeschooling went. He was not happy to homeschool. But he went with the flow. And so I wanted y'all to get his perspective of the last 3.5 years, what it's looked like for him, the things that he's learned, and talk about like what he was feeling and his experiences, all the things. I wanted you to hear from somebody in the system, like who's come out of the system himself. And so that's why I've invited Joshua to join me on my podcast today, which he's listened in before, but he's never gotten to be part of it. So welcome, Joshua.
Thank you for having me.
So let's get started let's talk about when we first started homeschooling. We started in July of 2020 is when I pulled the kids, and then we officially decided to homeschool in August of 2020. So just a few weeks later, I planned everything. Being a former middle school teacher, I really thought there was really only one way to learn. So I bought all the curriculums, way more than I should have, which we didn't. I don't think we've ever. Well, we finished a couple curriculums, but most of them we never finished. We moved into a different direction. But that first week, as I've mentioned before, was terrible. And so I want Joshua to share his experience about the first week of homeschooling in the Daniels household. Joshua, share your experience about that first week. And I'm going to back out because we only have one microphone.
Well, the first week was definitely all went downhill. It was a complete train wreck, and it was absolutely horrible, except for like a few good parts. I remember the very first day, my mom sat us down. She enticed us with snacks, so we were all going to sit still because
I thought snacks would do it. I thought that's it. You just need food and that's it.
Because we were all pretty young, and I was in 8th grade. So we're all still really young. And she was so excited because she had broken our day for the foreseeable future into 15-minute sections where we were going to do math and reading and writing, literature and read aloud, and where we were going to study all this random stuff. And I was not going to have
poetry, like all the things.
I was not going to have it because I was given a lot of promises when we started homeschooling that it was not going to be like school. It's going to be so much better. You're going to learn so much more. It's going to be the bestest. And
best is not a word, but that's okay. Keep going.
I mean, according to Little Caesars, but
according to Little Caesar says.
But we all started to get mad at each other. It took like an hour and a half. Like we learned like two things. We learned like a song and a poem. We also remember. But outside of that, we all just got really frustrated. We started like arguing, like all of us. And because my siblings, everybody but Kara, is really soft-spoken. I'm pretty outgoing.
Kara's outgoing and Joshua are outgoing. Sorry to interrupt.
But Kara was like 4 at the time. So I was kind of like the mouthpiece for my siblings. And so I was arguing with my mom about how unjust and stupid I thought this was because she made us do a ridiculous amount of stuff that she was planning on us like doing and following through. Every single curriculum and every single day was going to be perfect and utopian.
Can I pause for a second? Well, and I wanted to make sure like they got the very best education and that we didn't miss anything, that I wasn't going to miss any subject. It was going to be amazing. And I had expectations for myself that were very unrealistic. And I was worried about what other people were going to say and what other people were going to think, all of which frankly didn't matter. But at the time I was really concerned about it. So keep going.
So we start arguing. And I guess the point where all of my siblings are crying, I'm crying, my mom's crying, and we're just having it. And it just so happened that we had a piano tuner at our house to tune our piano because it really needed it. And we all decided we're all going to come upstairs, and I just started like watching. I was like, had a tear-stained face. My mom was just staying in the basement, sobbing her eyes out for whatever reason. Probably some
because expectations were not met. I mean, it was a train wreck. Anyway, keep going.
So we all just walked upstairs, and if we have a standing upright grand piano, and so to get to the strings and to be able to tune it, you have to take off the front panel. Now, you also have to be able to play a song that encompasses every single note on the piano, that hits every single note. So he's playing some crazy song that's hitting every note. And so me and my sister Katie was like recording on her phone that doesn't do like anything.
Yeah, it's my kids when they're young have Gab phones, which are like, they don't do anything. They can call and text. They can't even group text, and you can't text pictures. Like, they're dumb phones, which is exactly what I wanted for them. Anyway, keep going, Josh.
So we sat and watched the piano tuner tune the piano while asking him questions for a solid like hour or hour and a half, because tuning a piano takes a long time. But we were just enthralled. We were enjoying it. Everybody in my family, when we're brought up, were required to take piano lessons. So we all have some degree of interest in playing the piano.
Yeah, after a couple years, I gave that up though because they wouldn't practice. And then they started practicing once we quit piano lessons, which I was like, what the heck? Anyway, keep going.
I have my own thoughts on that. You do. That was the first day, and it was absolutely horrible up until that point, and I hated every second of it until I actually got to just do something. And what I didn't know was I was learning stuff from like the piano tuner, and I was learning concepts, but I didn't realize it.
Yeah, because I mean, he had a tuning fork, and he was talking to them about sound waves and pitch and like all these things. And at first I was super mad because I'm like, no, my kids need to be learning downstairs with their textbooks and all the things I got them. And as I continued to watch the kids just totally enthralled, I had to take a step back and be like, wait, oh my gosh, they are learning. And I mean, we're talking, you could hear a pin drop other than, the piano tuner and the piano, because they were so enthralled. Keep going, Josh.
So the first week is a blur after that. I remember she just started to cut things down. Like every month, every few weeks, we just get in this big argument. And I was like, I don't want to do this. It just seems wildly unnecessary. The only things that I really remember doing at that point in time was she made us do this writing journal where it had like prompts to write. And it was to improve my handwriting because my mom thought my handwriting sucked. And frankly, it did.
It did. Yeah. No, it did.
And so I was tasked to like write in cursive. And I did that for a full year or a year and a half. And because of that, I have good cursive handwriting. Granted, 50% of the people that read it can't understand it, but it looks really nice. So it was that. I had Algebra 1. So I took Algebra 1 that year. And then the other thing I remember is I started picking up the guitar because my brother had gotten a guitar, but he moved out. And so I bought it from him for $100. And I started taking lessons. But even before I started taking lessons, I'd like watch videos and just figure out how to play it and just try to like play songs that I thought were really cool.
And then we did read alouds too, which they all mostly liked. Like the first book that we chose, they hated. So part of me was like, no, we need to finish the book. And then I'm like, wait, why? Why do we need to finish the book if they don't like it? So I put that book down and I picked up, I think it was Where the Red Fern Grows, but I can't remember which book we ended up reading next. But we did read aloud. So, I mean, that's when I realized that I had to deschool them because, again, I thought deschooling was a total joke. I thought it was made up by the homeschooling community and not real. But then because Joshua and I had so much conflict between us, I realized, okay, maybe there's something to it. And so again, we did the bare minimum. And I perpetually felt guilty, and I cried every day. The kids didn't always see me cry, but I cried every day. And I perpetually felt guilty that I wasn't doing enough. But then some things started to shift. So talk about the guitar, because the guitar became important to me as a parent, and learning that education and learning actually looks different than what I was taught in education and taught in public schools myself. So talk about that, Josh.
So it was one of those things that I just started to pursue, because when you have a void of time to fill, you start filling it regardless. And we we had video games, and I used to be addicted to video games, but I was still really interested in playing the guitar. And so every day I'd practice for a few hours. At that point, my parents had got me books. I think we'd started taking lessons. So
No, you didn't. We didn't start you lessons until
like 6 months into
yeah,
it,
6 months into it. Yeah.
So I started learning like riffs that my brother liked a lot, because I love my brother and I wanted to be more like him, as every younger brother does at some point. And so kind of, but he had a lot of songs that he liked, and I was like, okay, I'll just learn those songs too. And so by the time he moved out, I had some amount of like skill. It's not really a skill, and it's not really a talent. Like, I had to develop this, but because of the void of time, and because of my just boredom, I guess, I started getting pretty good, and I started getting enough skill to where I was confident enough to show people. I was like, hey, look, I can play this song. I can play this, and it actually sounds halfway decent. And so I started picking up talents really fast, because something I believe is, when you have a lot less to focus on, whether or not you have a passion that you're working towards, or something that you think you're like, this is my purpose, until that happens, you're going to have a big time of like void of time to fill. And so I just put guitar there. And because there's not that many things in my brain moving around, there's not that many subjects I was having to focus on, I got really good at playing music really fast.
Mm-hmm. Really fast. So how are you feeling? Because we'll come back to that and get into moving towards unschooling. But how, during those first few months, I want you to share with these moms what was going through your head and some of your emotions and your feelings.
Well, I think the biggest one is like buyer's remorse. Like, when we started homeschooling, I was like, this is dumb. All of my friends are in classes, because I have friends that are span a few schools, especially at that point. And my best friend went to a completely different school. And so he would tell me about all the cool things he was doing in his classes with his friends, and my friends back at school. I'd talk to them every once in a while whenever we'd hang out, like what they were doing and how exciting their stuff was. And that like really hurt. It really did hurt. And I was mad at my mom, because it's difficult the first like few months, the first year, when you're trying to figure things out, especially if you already have a hard time making friends. It sucks. It hurts. It sucks. I was confused. I was really mad at my mom, because I thought I was missing out on this golden experience and opportunity that everybody else got to do, and it just seemed unfair. And that's why I was getting in these arguments with my mom. But to me, that ended up becoming the biggest blessing in my life. And still, I can attest to that to this day. After 3.5 years, it's when you realize what you're missing of what other people have, you start realizing what you do have, and what you have the opportunity to achieve. And so now I can confidently say I would never want to go back to school, because the people that are in school, the biggest thing that happened for me is I started having a mental shift, because I always thought learning was this thing that I thought was stupid. I thought you could only do it by reading a textbook. I thought that the only things that my mom wanted to see, which is probably true at the time, was how good I am at writing, how good I am, how well my handwriting is, am I doing good at math? And that's probably the only things my mom cared about at the time. But
that shifted, by the way. Anyway, keep going. For me, anyway.
I thought that was what learning was. And over time, I started to realize that it was not the case. And for me, the biggest shift was like my world changed, because before my world when I was in school was my friends, it was my classes, it was my teachers, and then it was my best friend outside of school. And my best friend outside of school, nothing changed there. So that was
he was here yesterday.
Yeah,
all day.
He decided to walk here for 3 hours in the snow, which is like a 5, 6 mile, 7 mile hike. And
it was kind of a blizzard yesterday, and he walked.
There was 6 inches of snow. Anyway, that's besides the point. But I realized that the world was so much bigger than my little eggshell. It was so much bigger. And I realized that there was this big lack of reality.
You mean in school?
No, just in life. Because at least from my experience, and I have a lot of friends that have graduated at this point, and a majority of them have kind of hit this crossroads where they're like, oh, what am I going to do with my life? Oh, I'm actually hitting reality. I'm not in school anymore. And it's because when I was in school, it felt like a manufactured reality. Like, first of all, if you're spending 8 hours a day somewhere, the beliefs that they're trying to teach you are going to be taught. And most times it's like, go to college. Some people will say, oh, well, get a trade. You could try that out. And what's ironic is they all say follow your dreams. This is besides the point, but they all say follow your dreams, yet they give you no time to follow them. So that doesn't make any sense.
Well, they don't even give you time to dream.
They don't give you time to dream. They're like, follow your dreams. And you're like, what dreams? I'm dreaming of math right now, but
yeah, I'm dreaming of my Algebra 1 class. Calculus. That's what I'm dreaming about.
But like, friends are completely different, because I have friends now that are all age ranges. Like, especially after my experience going to college last year, I have friends that are in their 30s and 40s, all the way down to 10. And I talk to these people regularly. I talk to people of all age ranges. But when you're in middle school, it's really just your age. And when you're in high school, it's maybe a year to 2 years from side to side of, like, maybe if you're a junior, you might talk to some freshmen.
And you might talk to some seniors.
But you're trapped in this world where all of the reinforcement of society is from people your age, which does not harbor new perspectives. And so not only are you trapped into a system where they're trying to teach you something that's very consistent and they're very, very effective at teaching, which is stay in school, go to college, otherwise you basically just won't have a life, which is kind of broken because college isn't worth it these days anyways, outside of like a few degrees, which I would stand behind anyways. But you're in a broken world because you're given a false reality. And so, at least from my experience, when my friends came out of school, when I came out of school too, I started having all these panic attacks because I was like, what am I going to do with my life? And that is probably one of the things I'm most grateful for, is because regardless of how old your kids are, once they start becoming teenagers, they're really starting to think for themselves. It's not as much like, oh, my mom and dad, they're helping me out, or my teachers or my friends. It's like, what am I supposed to do? What is my purpose? And so you start asking yourself these questions. But because I was pulled out of school at 8th grade, when I hit like high school years, I started having a lot of like panic attacks, not necessarily anxiety, but I was like really concerned about like what my purpose was. Why am I here? And I feel like we all have these questions at some point. But when kids come out of school, high school or college, they start having these questions because they get a reality check, because it's not your friends every day. And my guess is, as all of these moms and dads out here listening, you probably have your job, you see the same amount of people, but you also talk to people that are in a huge age range. You're doing things at home, you're doing things at work. It's not broken down. It's like
it's not like one age. It's not like, oh, everybody is 52.
Not only is it's not just one age, but when you're doing a job, you're encompassing a lot of different subjects. When you're in school, all the subjects are completely separated. Like, I know I see jokes on YouTube and online all the time where teachers get really mad when you're doing homework in other teachers' classes. Now, if you were at work and you had to do accounting while doing your job, you're not going to get in trouble if you're trying to figure out other stuff, especially if you're running a small business. Like, you have to, all these things are put together. But in kids' minds, they're completely taken apart. They're completely separated.
Well, I want you to talk a little bit because it was about 7 months into him homeschooling, and no, you had just turned 14. So we started homeschooling in August. His birthday's in March. He turned 14, and you announced to Dad and I something that you were going to do. Do you remember what you announced as soon as you turned 14?
Oh, yeah.
Because this changed his perspective too. This is when his shift, I feel like, started. In my perspective as mom, his shift started to happen. What happened?
So I've always liked money a lot, and I've always been good at saving it. And I wanted to start making money. And for anybody that does not know, if you are 14 in the majority of states, in a lot of states.
It's not every state, but it's in a lot of states.
Not every state. Most states are like 15, but
in our state,
even more than that, you can get a job at 14 years old. And so I was trying to do business stuff before that, and it wasn't working because there was a lot of things I had to learn at that point. But I realized I could get a job. So the day after I turned 14, I started applying and calling multiple businesses. I applied to about 12, and I called 20 just to see if I was eligible to work there. And once I finally had gotten my job, I had there was 2 other businesses that were ready to hire me. But the first job that decided to hire me was a local restaurant called Walter's. And
it's a local, and it's locally owned by this couple. It's family-owned business here in town. Anyway, keep going.
So I was hired to do dishes and later to bus, but to do dishes. And so I started having conversations with people that were barely in college, but it's more so like, oh, you're staying at home, going to college, and then just saving money because a lot of people can't just afford to go to college. So a lot of these guys are doing online college because I'm in a kitchen, right? And so I started having these conversations, and I started learning what work actually was.
So you're working, you're having all these experiences. He starts to see life. He's coming home and he's like, Mom, there is a world outside of school. I'm like, yeah, we've been working at this for like 7 months, right? Or 6 months, however long it was. August, September, October, November, December, January, February. Yeah, so 7-8 months. And he starts working, which I was really concerned. I'm like, oh my gosh, what if he has all these bad influences from all these adults at his workplace? Because he was the youngest one there, and most of the people that work there
for like 2 years actually.
Yeah, well, he still works there, but most of the people were adults, and I was really concerned, like, what influences will these adults have on him? But what I've learned is it was far worse. The influences in school were far worse than what he was getting, and these adults were respectful because he was 14, and they didn't want to ruin a 14-year-old. and I met his, some of his coworkers, and so that, I think for him, that's when it seemed, from my perspective, that's when a shift started happening for him. Let's talk a little bit about what else shifted, because when we first started homeschooling, he would fight and fight and fight with his siblings, and that shifted. You want to talk about that shift?
Yes. So when I was in school, I had like my little group of friends, my little powwow, and we did everything together. We'd have lunch together. We'd go to recess together because I was in middle school, and we do everything together, right? And joke around. And at home, I was so tired. I just want to play video games, like a lot of teenage boys. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah. Which is funny because now he plays occasionally, but he doesn't play that often.
I never play.
Yeah, he does.
I only play video games when I'm with other people that like to play video games. But I didn't really talk to my siblings. I didn't really have a relationship with any of them, except like maybe my older brother, who I was worried because he was about to leave, because he was graduating. And so I really wanted to try for that relationship. But I didn't really grow or work on relationships with my siblings.
No, he had already left the house because we started homeschooling after he graduated.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
exactly.
So the relationship, I don't know, like, yeah, keep talking about what happened.
But when I started being homeschooled at that point, because like when I was in school, the only person I really tried to work with was James, because he was leaving. He's my older brother.
Oh yeah, I
But,
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So then
Okay,
we started
I
being
see.
homeschooled. James was gone, my older brother. And so what happened was, rather than spending 8 hours a day with my friends, I spent 8 hours a day with my family and my siblings. And it was more like 10 hours a day. And what started happening was, at first there was this like mutual frustration, because when you're separated with your family for a long time, there's going to be a lot of differences, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we started like being siblings, like being friends, and that's something I really didn't have with my siblings. And so we started creating these relationships that I had never had in my life, where we became really close friends. Now, for me particularly, because I was with my siblings so much, my older siblings, they are not perfect. We fought all the time. Sometimes not as much for me, but my older two siblings would beat each other up, and sometimes my brother would beat me up, but not like crazy, but
like brothers,
like
they treat
brothers,
them like brothers,
like wrestle and put me in a chokehold and tickle me until I pee, that type of stuff. But I wanted to make sure I did not do that to my siblings, and so I was like, I'm gonna give them as much love and respect as I can. And that's something I probably had to talk to my mom a lot about, because she wanted to make sure I wasn't being a bad older brother. So we started growing relationships with them, and I shared one with my brother Jacob, and so we were starting to have conversations at night, and we just talk about life and like what he was excited about, what I was excited about. So our relationship started to grow a lot.
Yeah, and Jacob's 11, by the way. Josh is 16, almost 17, and Jacob's 11, turning 12.
Yeah, and at the time, I loved playing video games, and my sister also loved playing video games, and so we just played video games together, and that's what we talk about. And so our relationship grew there. And my youngest sister, Kara, I think she was 4. She was 4 to 5 when we started. She's always had a hard time with life, I guess, because
she has she's my child that has sensory processing disorder. So for her, especially when she was smaller, it was a challenge. Now we've got it. She's pretty regulated and is able to regulate herself. But anyway, keep going. And she's got a very big personality. Very big personality.
Yeah. Well, for the first couple years, she had her own demons to battle, but she needed some love. She needed somebody just to give her a hug, to not say anything, and just to listen, because she's so outgoing. And so when my mom wasn't able to, or my older sister wasn't able to, because they share a room, so they're obviously really close, regardless of whether or not my older sister, my young Katie would say that. Doesn't matter.
And Katie is a year younger than Josh, actually, to the minute. So she's turning 16. Anyway, keep going.
But Kara, my youngest sister, just needed some love. And so it would get to the point where my mom would be gone on an errand. I would be home with my siblings. Katie would be reading, because Katie is a bookworm. And she really became a bookworm when we started homeschooling.
She really became a bookworm.
And so she'd get really mad at Kara, because Katie was like just done with it, because Katie was typically the one that would like calm Kara down.
Yeah, if I wasn't there, then Katie would do it. And so
it got to the point where Katie was like tired of it. And so I was like, okay, I'll hold Kara. And so I just pick her up, and I just hold her, and I just listen to her, because what Kara often needs is she just needs somebody to listen, and somebody just to take her out of her fight or flight. And so I started to become an actual older brother for my sister, Kara. And that's something that took time to develop, and had I not been at home, I probably wouldn't have taken the time to develop that. I probably would have just put it to the wayside. But now every single night, like, I call her little one. And so for the past 3 years, almost every night up until like a few months ago, I would carry her upstairs when it was time to go to bed. I put her in her bed, and half the time she'd be asleep. The other half of the time she'd be pretending to be asleep.
Yeah.
So she'd be.
And I do, like, I'm the one who usually tucks her in, and then like the nights like my husband and I have date night on Saturday night, and so the kids tuck her in, and always one of them, and she's very particular. Like, we have a very specific routine for her, but one of her older siblings tucks her in.
I mean, I don't like tucking her in, but when she's asleep, she'd be tucked in downstairs. I bring her up to her bed. I kiss her on the forehead. I say goodnight, and then I go to bed. And that's something that she still remembers, and she will probably remember for the rest of her life. But almost most days for like 3 years, I like being homeschooled. I really needed to give her time.
So I think one thing that I think is interesting is, like, when I was growing up, I have 7 siblings, and my older sisters we're super close now, but there was times that my sisters were like, we're with our friends, so go away, and the friends were like, oh hey, and they never wanted the younger kids around. But when we started homeschooling, and it was that way prior to us homeschooling with my kids, like, no, I don't want them around. Oh my gosh, I want to be with my friends, and my friends don't want them around either. When we started homeschooling, and the several months in, when that shift started happening and my kids started turning towards the family more, it got to the point that they liked to be with each other. And so when friends would come over, their friends became very accustomed to, like, the younger siblings are going to participate most of the time too. And if they go to the ice cream store, the younger siblings want to come too. And their friends started treating them with respect, like the younger kids, which is not always usual or normal. Like, when Josh's best friend came over yesterday, Josh wasn't home. He was at work. And I'm like, dude, Josh isn't here. And he's like, so? And he went up and played with all of them. You know, he played with Katie, and he played with Jacob, and he played with Kara. And he came down and ate lunch with us. And he treats them with respect. And the other friends started treating the younger siblings with respect because they treat each other with respect, which blew my mind, because I didn't grow up with that. I grew up with, oh yeah, the younger siblings are obnoxious. And that blew my mind. But when I looked at other homeschooling families, that's how they were too. That, well, of course the younger siblings would come. Of course. Like, of course we're going to treat them with respect. And that blew my mind. I was like, what in the world? Okay. So because they're still super close. Like, my kids are very, very close.
We don't fight.
Yeah.
We do not fight.
They don't. I mean, occasionally they will. Like this morning, there was a little tiff between Jacob and Kara, but
they fight. I do not fight with them.
But even then, it's pretty rare. So I want to talk about the shift when you shifted as we started to move more towards an unschooling model. What happened for you? What happened for you?
I had to start asking myself questions like, what am I going to do with my time? I started to get a better grasp on what reality actually looked like. Especially working at Walters, like how people actually are. It's not outside of school, there's this whole world, and that's something I was starting to get a grip on. But I started asking myself a question like, what am I going to do? And there was a few goals I had, because most of my life I've been a pretty chubby kid. And about a year and a half ago, I was like, you know what? I'm going to lose this weight. And so I was like, I'm just going to make a food journal. And it'd be cool to make like a YouTube channel about it. I was like so convinced. I was like, I'm going to lose this weight. I was like, I'm going to make a YouTube channel to like track progress, you know? And then I could like have that to peg for like stability. So I stick with it. And I did. And I started making videos about it every once in a while. And something I wanted to do for a long time was to like track my calories. And I was 15 at this point. And what I started doing was I'd make a little YouTube short every day about what I ate. And granted, it didn't go viral. I got a good amount of traction, and my short started doing pretty well. And the fourth one got 7,000 views, which is not important. But what happened was the other videos I had started getting impressions. And so I got 500 subscribers in 2 days, which is still insane to me. I don't know why anybody chose to watch or subscribe. But I was like, oh, wait, this YouTube thing isn't a scam. And so I took a step back. This would be this past year. And I was like,
it was about this time last year.
It was this time last year. And keep in mind, for the past 2 years, it's all been music. It's all been, I'm trying to figure out my life. I went to college. I'm trying to figure out credits, right?
Pause that for a second, because last year, so when Josh was 15, Katie was 14, we did dual enrollment with them.
Keep in mind, this is not because my parents forced me to.
Yeah, he bugged us about it. And I was
it's
like,
because
okay, fine,
I asked. And for all the people out there, I'm convinced college classes, at least the ones I did, were so much easier than what my friends make high school classes out to be, which makes no sense. I have if your kids are in AP classes, why?
You don't get college credit for those unless you take tests.
It's like a maybe. It's like, you know what? We're going to give you extra homework. You're going to work your butt off. Then you're going to take a test. And if you fail, I guess it's all for nothing.
You don't get credit
a little
for
high
it.
school credit. You could go to a college class, which a lot of districts, my guess is, will have dual enrollment programs with the local community or state college. And they will pay for a good amount of classes and a good amount of credits. You can still be in school and take college classes. But from my experience, they're literally easier. The professors treat you with respect, as anybody in college knows. And if you find a good professor, they're going to help you through your problems. And so I went with Katie last year because I wanted to go to college. I was like, you know what? I just want to get high school out of the way. I want to find out if school is for me. And I was working a lot with music and piano at the time. That's kind of like where my passions were. I worked a lot at my job at Walters, and I just loved working. I knew I loved business, and I was like, if I'm going to go to college, I want to find out what this is like. Plus, this is for anybody that does want to go to college or maybe like go to med school or law school and really pursue or an engineering degree. You can get an associate's degree before you graduate high school, which that doesn't make any sense.
And the state pays for it usually.
And the state pays, most of the time, a lot of the time with dual enrollment programs, you can get enough credit hours to graduate in the 4-year span. Now, if you pay a little bit of money out of pocket, you can get the same degree in 2 years for an associate's degree. And another point for you guys, if you have that associate's degree, it's going to give you a lot more when you're trying to apply to colleges rather than your high school transcript. Because obviously, if anybody was to look at it, a college associate's degree is going to be worth a lot more than a high school diploma. So then you can get in any school you want. And so my thought was, I don't know if I want to go to college or not. So I was like, why the heck not? It's free. I kept bugging my parents. Eventually, we got enrolled for a year. And it was about 4 months in. I was like, this is stupid. Granted, I'm not trying to flex on you guys, but this is how easy it was for me, at least. I got 100%, 100%, 100 out of 100 in my first 2 classes.
He made the president's list, and then my daughter made the dean's list.
I had a 4.0 GPA my entire year at college.
And they earned all these credits. Anyway. So, but at the end of the year, both he and my daughter Katie said, we don't want to go back.
It was 4 months in for me. It was 4 months in because
I made them finish out the year. I was like, no, I signed you up for the year. You're finishing out the year.
So that was a requirement. But that's kind of when I really started asking myself the hard questions, why am I here? What I'm doing this? Why am I doing this? Because otherwise I can just get a college degree like everybody else and just college is how I'm going to figure it out. Which, for the record, is not. Don't do that. That's a bad idea. At least for me. It doesn't make sense to go and spend a lot of money or spend a lot of time pursuing something that you don't know what you're pursuing.
Okay. So do you feel like now you kind of have an idea of what you want to do with your life?
Yes, it just took for me to figure out what I wanted to do, what my passion was, what I really wanted to pursue for my career long term. It took me 2 years. It took me 2 years to get a grasp on it. It took me another 6 months, 6 to 9 months to like formulate a plan. I'm there now. I have my plan. I'm working towards my goals and I'm getting the skills.
So let's talk about your passions, because I hear from so many parents that are like, how long does it take for the kids to find their passions? And I'm like, no, it takes a while, right? Josh didn't know. Like it took a long time.
2 years.
Like a couple years. And he was trying to figure things out. And we did the stuff that the state required for homeschooling, bare minimum, but we did it. And it finally, like, he's like, okay, I think I know what I want to do with my life. And my observation is like, I look at my friends' children that are older, even my own older kids, they had to figure that out as adults, as opposed to having the time to think about it. And I think about a lot of my friends whose kids are going to college and they're paying all this money, and half the time they don't even know what they want to major in, right? They're like, I don't even know who I am. But they're so conditioned to believe like, no, you
have to
go
go
to
to
college, and that's how you're going to find out which is not true. And I had to come to grips with that, because I was one of those people that was like, no, everyone has to go to college. Okay. I want to talk, Joshua, I want you to talk a little bit about like advice that you'd give to kids that are, whether they're younger kids or teenagers that are coming out of the school system and homeschooling. What advice would you give those kids?
I'd say the first thing you want to do is,
Get close to the mic.
if you're old enough, go get experiences where you can learn how other people live their life. For me, there's a lot of mentorship programs. We did a program at Kilroy's workshop where I got to forge an axe myself, which is kind of weird. It's kind of wacky, but I learned a lot. I met a lot of cool people. I had a lot of cool conversations. For me, the best advice I can give you is, first, give yourself time. Second, give yourself opportunities, because through opportunities, you're going to figure out what you like or what you don't like. And if you don't like it, that's fine. Move on. If you're a parent and your child does not want to do something, do not force them. Now, if they can't write, they should probably learn to write. If they can't read, they should probably learn to read, because those are
and
vehicles.
basic math. Math.
Because the question you got to ask yourself is this a path or is this a vehicle? Now, you need vehicles to choose paths, but you don't need a path to. You need to let them figure it out. Because for anybody that's trying to figure it out, for all the kids that are coming out of the school system, give yourself time. Give yourself opportunities, and you have to learn what the world is like. Because when you learn what the world is like, you're going to start to figure out or ask yourself questions that are going to help you figure out your purpose. And it's going to suck. You're going to be really sad. You're going to miss your friends. But it's going to be so much more worth it if you give yourself time, because you're going to start realizing that you have an opportunity that all your friends don't have. You have the time that your friends don't have to ask yourself the questions that are going to help you find what you're looking for. So give yourself time. Give yourself time, especially if the parents. If your child does not want to do something, please don't force them unless it is necessary for them to find their path in the future.
Yeah, like read, write, basic math. There we are.
I don't need to know geometry to figure out how to edit a better YouTube video. Like, I don't need that. I need to know how to do basic math, and granted, it's important to know how to do your taxes and how to understand how a mortgage works. Those are important things to know, because most of us will probably come to that crossroads at our life. But give yourself time, because it's going to be fine. It's going to suck, but give yourself time. Seize opportunities and do everything you can to learn new things, not on the basis of somebody else, but on your own terms. Like, if you take every single opportunity, you need to redefine what learning is. Learning is taking in information and changing who you are. That's kind of how I see it. Other people might see it differently, but for me, I change who I am when I learn something. And so when I learned how to forge, I learned a lot, and it changed my behavior when it came to forging. When I learn anything. So when I come into social situations, oftentimes, not like overanalyzing stuff, which I probably do anyways, but I often figure out like, oh, how could I be a better friend to my friend? And I learn how to be a better person. I learn how to edit videos better, and I choose the things I want to learn.
Okay. I've got a question for you to finish up here. What does your day look like now? I mean, when we first started, it looks very different than when we very first started. What are you learning now? What does your day look like now, or kind of your week look like now? Because really, he's at an age where I guide him to some degree, but he really is responsible. He's responsible for his stuff. So talk about your day.
People ask me this a lot, actually, because they're like, what do you do?
What do you do all day?
This is typically what happens. I have like a seminary class in the morning, so like a church class, and that one's just a given. But it's like every other day. If I do not have seminary, I typically will sleep until like 8 or 9 because it's important for me to sleep. I like doing stuff later at night. It's probably not the best. I probably shouldn't do that as much, but it's important for me to get my sleep. I used to go to the gym with my dad and my brother in the morning. Now I typically go in the afternoon, and sometimes I just take a rest day or I just work on other projects. But I wake up, typically I sleep in. If I go to seminary, I go to seminary in the morning. That's the first period of the day. And then typically what happens is I make myself breakfast. I have conversation with my older brother and my parents and my siblings, and we talk about all the things we're learning, which is actually something I just realized this. Every morning I have a conversation with one of my family members about what we're thinking about. And we kind of have like...
You have very philosophical discussions.
We have philosophical discussions about what our purpose is, how we're working towards our goals, how we're becoming like the person I want to be. Because my favorite thing in this world is change and working towards my purpose. So I have a conversation in the morning, typically about 11. I get out my laptop. I start editing whatever project I'm working on. Right now, I'm doing YouTube videos for myself, for my channel, and for my mother.
And for a couple other people.
On the side.
Yeah.
But my main projects, it's like, I have to film, I have to script, I have to, like, actually edit, and then I have to do all the other work, which is like SEO work, finding out what ideas are good, what ideas wouldn't perform as well on YouTube. And I do that up until, like, 3 or 4 or 5, and then I typically go and work at one of my 2 jobs. So I work every day, and I just work on YouTube videos. and
then there's a couple things that in our state that the state requires, and so...
But we knocked those out of the park when I went to college.
Yeah, most of those things we knocked out of the park, and then there's a couple things that he still has to do. And so...
The only other day for me is Friday, where we have an arts program, which is not necessarily geared...
It's an enrichment program.
It's an enrichment program that... I like theater, but I don't love theater, but I'm there to support my sister.
Who really enjoys it, yeah.
And my mom loves theater, and she's like, you gotta do this. And I was like, okay. So, and they need me there anyways. They
need extra boys in the program, so that works.
So I was like, you know what, we'll do this. It's the last year I'm doing it, because I'm graduating as a junior in April or May. Because I got my credits when I went to college. I also was in multiple like extracurricular classes that were about history and such.
So early on, when we first started homeschooling, we did all these different co-ops, and we were able to knock out a lot of the history and the sciences and all those things, and the literature,
math.
And so everything. Now, what are you reading right now? What books are you reading right this second?
So my mom gave me a list of requirements I need to do before I graduate, which I agree with. It's literally, I have to finish, I have to get one more science credit. So I'm going through this science course, chemistry course, but I do it. It's a basic YouTube course. I do it typically once a week, and I'll just go through the week's videos and week's work in like a few hours.
Yeah, like in an hour.
But I find that at a random point in time. But the other thing I do is I try to go to lunch with somebody once a week and have a conversation and learn about them and really work on those people skills. and get a new perspective, because I love gaining new perspectives from other people. So that's something I try to do, is whether they're my age, whether they're younger, whether they're older. There's so many people out there that would love to have a conversation with you. So I try to do that once a week.
What are you reading?
Books I'm reading. Right now, I'm listening. I do these all at different times. I'm listening to The Obstacle is the Way
By Ryan Holiday, about Stoicism.
I am reading Atomic Habits by James Clear, which is how to take control of the small parts of your life and like the habits you make. And I typically read that on Sundays. And then like with my scriptures, I read meditations right before I go to bed.
That's by Marcus Aurelius.
Marcus Aurelius from like
zero.
Yeah,
he was a
like 180 or 100 BC. He was like an emperor, and
he was an emperor, and he followed the Stoic philosophy.
That's besides the point.
Anyway,
but
it's so good, by the way.
Stoic or not, there's like certain principles I think are good for people to know. So, I read How to Win Friends and Influence People, which this is actually, if you struggle with social situations or you're worried about making friends being homeschooled, read How to Win Friends and Influence People and then put those into practice. This is also another reason why I go to lunch with people once a week, is because I get to practice just making friends. And then I have so many friends now, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I have so many friends, I can reach out to somebody and have somebody go to lunch with once a week. I can go make new friends. But there's a lot of books on my list, but I love the principles I'm learning about life and about people, and those are the books I'm reading. And so once those books are done, I can graduate.
Yeah, and so he's got 17 that he's knocking out. But they're all good. Like they're all
really good.
They're all good books that I read as an adult and thought, why didn't I read this when I was younger?
And then after that, for all the people wondering about Joshua Daniels, I'm gonna go make YouTube videos full time over the next year, and we're working on getting a job with a creator. And once that happens,
yeah, there's a creator that has been helping him, that he's kind of mentored and
worked with a little bit.
And so, yeah, the goal is to get a job with him.
And then just working on skills that
not just an internship, like a job.
Like a job. I don't. It might end up being framed as an internship. That's besides the point. But I found my passion.
Yeah, because right now you're kind of sort of interning like that. Anyway,
just like learning opportunities with him. He's a cool guy. But
he is a cool guy.
I just work on my passions every day, and I just work my butt off, because I personally, especially in my family, we dream big. I have huge dreams, and there's no way I'm going to reach those without working as hard as I can now. And for all the people, this is important for all the kids. If you're not going to go to college, you're not going to miss out on having friends or relationships. If you're working really hard towards something, the people that also work as hard as you are going to find you, and you're going to become friends with the people that help you become who you are. So don't think you're going to miss out on the people, on hanging out and having friends. You are going to find friends in the avenues that you go towards. So if you're worried about that, there you go. There's your little answer to that. Just keep working towards it. You'll be lonely at the start, but it will work out, and it will be worth it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So with that, my mamas and papas, know that you're doing better than you think you are. You're not going to ruin your kids. I thought I was going to ruin Joshua.
And she still did.
And he's going to need therapy, but that's okay. No. For sincerely, like, they turn out okay. They really do. And I'm grateful. Like, I'm grateful to my sweet boy for taking the time to interview with me. And he was actually really gracious. He's like, yeah, I'd actually love to. And know that you're doing better than you think you are, and you're not going to ruin them. They'll figure things out, and so will you. And so with that, I have a child having a meltdown in the background, so I better go attend to her. Have a great week. You got this, mamas and papas.